You, Stacey, and a very warm welcome to everyone that's joining us today for the 10th annual Aberdeen Houston Gateway. So good morning, Houston, and good afternoon, Aberdeen, Scotland, Europe. And delighted to have lots of people coming in just now to join us for these sessions. Some of you may be viewing this live, and some of you may be viewing it on playback later. But whether you're viewing it on live or playback, delighted you've spent the time to find out a little bit more about the wonderful world of Houston and all the things it has to offer to supply chain companies, etc. So I think without further ado, Stacey, so we keep to time, I would like to introduce our chair, who has been involved with the Gateway for a long time and has supported us through the years to grow this event. So delighted that our chair today is Geoffrey Blair from the Katy Houston Partnership. Geoffrey is Director for Europe, Middle East and Africa, and he will do a sterling job at keeping us to time. So I'm about to hand over to the chair, who will then hand us over to an official opening from the Lord Provost of Aberdeen. And we'll be then hearing from my good friend Travis Middleton of Texas Global, BoyarMiller, Jackson Walker, Stronachs, Woodlands, and Katy. So quite a showcase to bring you up to date, a market update on Houston. So without further ado, I am going to time. Geoffrey, I'm delighted to introduce you as chair again, and I'm delighted you can do this job for us because I know you do it so well. So Geoffrey Blair, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Brett. And hello, everyone. I'm just going to give a few words of welcome here. It is a pleasure to be participating once again in the Aberdeen Houston Gateway event. A special one. Everyone is special, but this one is more special because it's the 10th anniversary edition, and my 8th Gateway, and my 6th one in person. And I'm very happy to be here in Aberdeen. We have an excellent program again this year. It's going to be split into two parts in 2 days, and today we're going to have 7 excellent speakers to share with you from both regions, to share with you a lot of useful information. And a recent addition to the partnership's participation this year is I have my colleague with me, Jose Visario, who you'll be hearing everything about Houston's energy transition plans tomorrow. He's the man with the energy transition plan, you can say, for Houston. And I'm very pleased that he was able to accompany me here this year. So with moving on to make sure we keep on time, because I wouldn't be much of a timekeeper if I didn't keep myself on time, we're going to move into the first speaker. So it is my distinct pleasure to introduce the Lord Provost, Barney Crockett, who is an exceptionally experienced public servant. Councillor Barney Crockett is currently, as I said, the Lord Provost of the City of Aberdeen and President of the World Energy Cities Partnership, connecting leading energy cities on all continents who are committed to fostering the transition to a more sustainable energy future. Previously serving in a wide range of high-profile roles, both in the Northeast and nationally, including City of Aberdeen Council Leader, President of HYER, the European Association of Hydrogen and Fuel Cells and Electromobility in the European regions, Chair of the North Sea Commission's Promoting Economic Development of the North Sea Region, and Scottish Enterprise. Regularly interviewed on local economic affairs for various local and international publications, including the Financial Times, Guardian, The Economist, New York Times, Irish Times, and Handelsblad. Television and radio appearances include the UK, Norway, Germany, Japan, and Switzerland. And I noticed what's missing there is Houston. So Lord Provost will have to add that next time that you come to Houston. In addition to this, he is a wonderful educator, storyteller, and an excellent dining companion. So, Lord Provost, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Jeffrey, and thanks to everyone for coming along for what I think will be a very, very exciting set of talks. Jeffrey, there, the last things he said is very much based on personal experience. We go back a long way, and can I first of all commend that Jeffrey's presentation will be very, very much worth listening to. I think for me as Lord Provost of Aberdeen, it's an enormous pleasure to welcome you to the Gateway. I think that Houston is our most important world partner, and it's fantastic to hear about us engaging jointly on things like transition. I think that everything depends, as I think was already touched on relationships. And I think that Aberdeen, we have a very powerful relationship, a long-term one with Houston. I have I think a very strong relationship with the mayor, but also in particular with Jeffrey and his colleagues at the Greater Houston Partnership. I think that we have lots to work on together, and I think that that will get closer. I think that the underpin what I'm saying, the truth of what I'm saying, is I'm just back from Houston, which Jeffrey can confirm, and I'm just about to go. So it's really quite an intense relationship, and really we are widening that discussions about energy, and it couldn't be a more exciting time in the world of energy. I know there's some tragic background to that. But for energy, it's taking very much center stage, and we're very privileged to hear about a few of the things about that today. So thanks everybody for coming. I'm looking forward to it. I hope to see people later in the week as well, and I'll be still around. So if anybody ever does want to ask a question about me, then please feel free to do that through the chat as well. Thanks very much, Jeffrey, and congratulations to everybody.
Thank you very much, Lord Provost. And indeed, we look forward to seeing you in Houston again very, very soon. So, so now is my presentation. My goal is to give a wide overview of the Greater Houston economy. I'm setting the stage, as you say, for the Greater Houston region's economy and its place in the world. So a lot of high-level statistics, not a whole lot of detail. If anybody wishes any more specific detail, well, you know how to contact me. I'm happy to share. So could I get the next slide, please? And I believe we're going to start with a video.
In Houston, we make tomorrow together. We're powering the low-carbon future, beating cancer and advancing gene therapy, building tech hubs that invent tomorrow, leading humans to the moon, to Mars, and beyond. In Houston, you'll taste the excitement of innovation and the satisfaction of finding solutions that matter. So bring your talent and ambition to Houston. Bring your ideas and inspiration. Build your future. Build our future. Let's make tomorrow together.
Slide, please. So next slide, please. So what I'm going to do in that video, you heard many different things mentioned there. So I'm just going to hit on those different sectors as quickly as possible. But first, I need to say something about the Greater Houston Partnership. The Greater Houston Partnership is a nonprofit organization funded by Houston businesses to help Houston businesses. Our goal is to make Houston the best place in the world to live, work, and build a business. We have many different services for our members, and probably one of the most key activities that we do is we are that convening authority for the Greater Houston region for the business community to talk about things that matter most to them. So next slide, please. So these are the services that we provide on the regional scale. So for the 12 counties that surround Houston, we can help with real estate by initiating property searches, site tours, coordinate with site selection visits, research. We have our own research team, access to top business and civic leaders, advocacy for projects around permitting, and information and assistance around evaluating incentives, right? So there are 12 counties, 36 economic development agencies in the region, and you're going to hear from two of the most prominent ones. If I can promote two that I think are very, very important for that Aberdonian community, it would be the Woodlands and Katy. Next slide, please. So this is our regional overview. Next slide, please. So where is Houston located in the world? And I think this is particularly of interest for companies from Europe. As you see, we're equally distanced in the Americas. In the Western Hemisphere, we have that central hub location. So my sales line is always, if you're going to be doing business between Alaska and Argentina, you can do it from Houston very, very easily. And even on a smaller scale, if you wanted to do business between Toronto and Mexico City, again, Houston is right there in the middle. So direct flights to 5 continents. We had 6 continents. We had our direct flight to Africa via Ethiopian Airlines, but it just started just before the pandemic, and we lost that. But I'm told by our colleagues at the airport system that we are going to be getting that back. So great connectivity from around the world. Next slide, please. So zooming in a bit on that map where we have now the United States, so you can see we're equally distant between both the East Coast and West Coast. And in the southern part of the United States on the border of Mexico. And we've seen a great deal of growth in the last decade. Some of the biggest growth in the United States in the metro areas in not only Houston, but also San Antonio and Austin and Dallas-Fort Worth. So from Houston, you have access to a great deal of market share. Next slide, please. So zooming in on that map still further, this is our region of cooperation, the 12 counties that surround the city of Houston. And so from the Gulf of Mexico to almost halfway to Dallas-Fort Worth, Austin, and San Antonio, roughly spoken. 7.2 million people in the metro area. And the city of Houston itself is the 4th largest city in the United States. A lot of people don't know that, but it's Los Angeles, New York, Chicago, and then Houston. And with a very large workforce, as you see. Next slide, please. Zooming in even further on that map, this is from our metro area. So you see right in the middle of downtown there where the offices of the GHP are located. You see it also encompasses the port region, the petrochemical complexes, and you see, of course, due north there, you see the Woodlands, and due west, you see Katy, and you'll be hearing more from them ladies later. So excellent connectivity, north-south interstate roads, east-west interstate roads that dissect the United States, and then Highway 69 that you see there from the lower left going up into the upper right. That's the NAFTA highway. Now we have to call it the USMCA highway, which connects Mexico and Canada. So excellent multimodal connections. 40% of our rail traffic goes to Mexico. We are connected to the United States and to the Western Hemisphere with our infrastructure. Next slide, please. What makes a city successful or metropolitan area successful is the people within it. 25% of our population is foreign born. Over 145 plus languages are spoken there. A third of the population is made up of immigrants in the last 10 years. We are that melting pot, certainly in the southern United States. There's no other city that has the type of makeup as the city of Houston. And that, of course, carries on to our surrounding communities as well. So during this presentation, when I'm saying Houston, please think of that greater region all encompassing, not just the city of Houston. Next slide, please. So we are that hub of international business, over 5,000 international businesses there, 150 Houston-based companies operate in 110 foreign nations. We have the third largest consular corps in the United States. Those are official government representatives that help citizens from those countries. So we have a great many of those in Houston because we have a great many global citizens living in Houston, and 18 sister city relationships across 5 continents, and very proudly so. Aberdeen is also a sister city of Houston. Next slide, please. So our workforce, they are young and they are talented. Median age is just shy of 35 years old. Almost a 250,000 of them are employed in the tech sector, very, very important these days, and over 700,000 corporate professionals, of course, those support jobs that every company needs, no matter what sector they're in. Next slide, please. So, looking at our population growth by age category, you can see there that we have been attracting not only the people that have been coming out of the schools in Texas, but also younger people from all around the United States to come to Houston for those economic opportunities. This is not going to change. This is only going to grow. Certainly as the digital economy opportunities grow in Texas, which they are growing like no other state in the United States, we will continue to have that young, digitally talented workforce. Next slide, please. So this is our part of our talent infrastructure, of course, is our education system. We have 3 tier 1 universities, University of Texas being the largest system in the greater Houston area, followed by Texas A&M University, which is just an hour and a half to the northwest of Houston. And of course, Rice University, which is academically the highest ranked university in Texas. But also very, very critically is our community college system, which is basically our technical colleges. We have one of the largest systems for community colleges in the United States, and they provide that critical talent stream for those mid-skills jobs. So when you think of welders and carpenters and x-ray technicians and nurses and all these jobs that don't require a 4-year degree, but do require a certification, and also for continuing training as well for that upskill from lower skilled jobs to mid-skilled jobs. It's a critical part of our education talent pool. Next slide, please. And this is one of the programs that we have. This is actually embedded within the Greater Houston Partnership itself, our Upskill Houston, which started out as a task force and ended up being a division of the Greater Houston Partnership. And again, as that convening authority, we can get the educational institutions, the training and service providers, and the public sector all together with industry, where they can make sure that they are providing the talent that they need to the companies, hearing from the specific companies the skills and talents that they need, and making sure that they can fill that, that talent pipeline. Next slide, please. So I know that many of the people viewing have been to Houston many times. If you haven't been, I suggest you do come, because I'm sure that your perception of it will be positive. It is a great city to live. It's very green. It has lots of things to do in your spare time, and sporting activities, performance arts, etc. And it's a great place for a high variety of cuisines from all over the world. Although I'm told by one of the other speakers for the Gateway that they can't find good white or black pudding, so we may have to work on that. So next slide, please. The other way, please. Okay, so one of the key reasons for our growth, and as you remember from one of the previous slides, just how much we've been growing in population in the last 10 years, is because of not only the central position in the United States, but the low cost of living, right? And low cost does not mean low quality, but that's one of the key reasons that we've been able to attract and keep talent here. Next slide, please. We talked about the cost of housing. So we had the cost of living and cost of housing, a key critical component to that. Because once you attract people, you want to keep them there. So an affordable place to live with many amenities is key to that, because generating your own talent, keeping your own talent there, but being able to attract talent from elsewhere is key to any metropolitan areas, key to success. Next slide, please. So I cannot promote Houston without the Houston region without promoting the state of Texas. It is a great state for doing business, nationally ranked. Year on year, we win competitions from CEO Magazine, #1 state for doing businesses, Site Selection Magazine, which is from the site selectors, that the companies that go out and look for corporate entities, look for locations for them. That personal and corporate income tax, that's state personal and corporate income tax. I get a lot of questions about that. People think that they don't have to pay federal taxes. Yes, you have to pay federal taxes in the state of Texas, but no state taxes there. Next slide, please. So diversity of people that live there, and also a diverse industry mix to go along with that. So now we're going to focus on our industries. Next slide, please. So to the left there, you see these are our 7 key industries that we focus on. Energy 2.0, which you will hear more about in a fantastic program tomorrow. Life sciences, advanced manufacturing, logistics and distribution, headquarters, aerospace, and digital technology, which not only is it an industry on itself, but it has merged itself with all the other industries that I just mentioned. 25 Fortune 500 corporate headquarters. Most recently was the announcement that Exxon Mobil moving their headquarters from Dallas to Houston. Next slide, please. So very briefly in Energy 2.0, because again, my colleague Jose Becerra is going to speak on that tomorrow. Next slide, please. So just setting the stage for him. Houston is the energy capital of the world, and we will stay the energy capital of the world, also through the energy transition. Next slide, please. So some of the key components for staying that energy capital of the world: talent and expertise, ability to scale, research and development, public policy, capital investment, very critical, and probably more critical, momentum. Next slide, please. This ties in, our energy transition plan ties in very closely with the City of Houston's climate action plan. I'm going to leave Jose to speak on that tomorrow, but I just wanted to show that this is not something that we are doing on our own. This is with in relationship to the plans of our regional partners as well. Next slide, please. So life sciences. Many of you know Houston as that city of energy, that energy capital of the world, but you also may not know that we're also home to the Texas Medical Center, the largest medical care or healthcare cluster in the world. Next slide, please. So we have over 1,700 life science companies, over 250,000 health and life science professionals, and over 1,800 active clinical trials take place in Houston. And this is critical. That's 20% of all of the clinical trials that take place in the United States take place in the greater Houston region. And when I talk more about the Texas Medical Center, you'll find out why that is. So just think about that as another of our linchpins for our life science industries. Next slide, please. So of those life science companies, here's a few examples of them. Of course, you see Johnson & Johnson there, the largest life science company in the world, has invested quite recently in the last 7 years in the Texas Medical Center area. Lonza, that was a project that I was also involved with, a Swiss company that does personal medicine in gene therapy. Next slide, please. And of course, the state of Texas is also a great partner of ours in one of our key life science sectors, which is cancer. So the Cancer Prevention and Research Institute of Texas is that organization that can fund grants for companies to do cancer research in Texas. Next slide, please. So this is a very interesting slide, I think, because it just shows how much the life science and healthcare sector has grown in the greater Houston region just in the last 5 or 6 years. So you see there with that red line is the GDP growth, how that has been heading up at a sharp rate. And you see also that steady growth of the employment growth. Many people don't know this, but it's actually healthcare that is the largest promoter, the largest job provider in Houston, not energy. It is healthcare. Next slide, please. So in comparing ourselves to other metros in Texas and to the US, you see where Houston has had a great deal of growth. You see there the GDP in blue, the number of establishments in green, and the employment in the deeper shade of blue there. So you see there are some cities who may have more establishments, but not more employment. Again, going back to what I said about it's the #1 job provider in the greater Houston region, and in the GDP. Next slide, please. So, and at the very core of that is the Texas Medical Center. That is our medical city within our city. Why are we that clinical trials hub? Because of the 60 some odd, I believe it's 61 or 62 institutions or organizations that are located there. A third of them are hospitals. From newborn babies to World War II veterans and everything in between, companies have those patients in order to conduct those clinical trials. And we have some world-class institutions there, such as MD Anderson, the #1 cancer treatment and research hospital in the world, and not to go unmentioned, the Texas Heart Institute, where the first artificial heart was ever developed and transplanted, also in Houston, Texas. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, 1 minute left, Jeffrey.
Thank you. So very, very quickly on the healthcare and life science innovation scene in Houston. When I started in July of 2013, pardon me, none of these innovation institutes existed. None of them. These all come into life in the last 8 years. Next slide, please. So some of the recent developments in the life science scene, TMC3, which is the big project that the Texas Medical Center Corporation is undergoing, a multi-institutional 37-acre research campus that's being developed. It's being not just planned, it's being built right now as we speak. And one of the recent organizations that have also set up in the Texas Medical Centers, the Texas A&M Innovation Plaza, where they're bringing engineering to medical apparatuses and treatment and combining those two. Next slide, please. Digital technology, next slide. So when I talked about how digital technology has integrated with all of our say traditional sectors in Houston, here's a wonderful example of it, where you have it spread out all through the region, touching all the different sectors, from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Texas Instruments, but also Siemens, AWS, and let us not forget NASA, but also NOV and Schlumberger, because of course digital technology is heavily present in energy. Next slide, please. Just an example of some of the digital companies that have located in Houston. This is just a sample. It's I would need many more slides after this, and I don't have that much more time, but this will give you a good idea. Next slide, please. Venture capital investment, very, very key, right? Because venture capital is what you need if you want to grow your innovation ecosystem. So you see there just how much we're doing in different sectors, right? So you see there, we've had explosive growth in the last couple of years. In fact, we've set records, right? So we've been very, very keen on attracting venture capital from all of our target sectors. Next slide, please. Where are those venture capital deals going? So you can see all the different sectors listed there, and you see Houston stacked up against Austin and Dallas. Look at life science. Look at oil and gas. Look at industrial. So we are working very, very hard at getting these new technologies in Houston into these markets. Next slide, please. Just another example of some recent tech expansions. Next slide, please. We are giving Houston's innovation ecosystem, which is spread out, of course, all over the region from NASA to Texas Medical Center to Energy Corridor. We're giving it a home. We're calling it the Houston Innovation Corridor, and right in the middle of it is a building called the ION. It's owned and run by Rice University, and it's where any innovative company or institute can meet from any sector. They can meet there and see if they can work together to bring our innovation ecosystem forward. There's a tram line that runs right through the middle of it. It connects downtown to the Texas Medical Center, and right in between that is the ION. Next slide, please. Just the ION is open. We suggest, particularly if you come around OTC, it's right across the street from Greentown Labs, which is the most I would say prominent energy accelerator in the United States. So if you're going to see Greentown Labs, you can also see the ION. Next slide, please. Aerospace, I'm going to go very quickly through this because I know I'm probably coming up at time. Okay, NASA, Johnson Space Center. I can't think of a more innovative organization in the world than NASA, operating the most hostile environments known to man. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Houston Spaceport, the only spaceport located near a major metro in the world. From where I sit in my office in downtown Houston, I'm 35 minutes from it. Right, so think of a vertical takeoff, vertical landing. We're already locating companies in the business park right next to where the terminal is going to be. Think of the companies such as Axiom Space and Intuitive Machines, who are building the next generation space station that's going to go into orbit when the ISS goes out of service. It's being built in Houston. The lunar landing modules and habitats that are going to be on the moon are being built in Houston by these companies. Next slide, please. Advanced manufacturing. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we know Houston as being that manufacturing location for oil and gas, but it's also for materials. We make more computer components than any other city in Texas, and then we get them to where they need to go as well. Next slide, please. I'm going very quickly through these now. So we make things in Houston, and then we get them to where they need to go, if that's via road, water, air, or rail. #1 port in the United States by value of export goods. So we're exporting those finished goods. There are full ships going into the Port of Houston. There are full ships going out of the Port of Houston, which is, of course, what you want in a port system. Next slide, please. The other way, please. Next slide, please. I'm going to wrap things up now. So I know I went very, very quickly. I'm happy to make this presentation available to anyone who wishes to have it. So that completes my presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to welcome our next speaker, Mr. Travis Middleton. And Travis began his career with Prudential Life Insurance in 1979. And within 3 years, Travis moved into the employee benefits area with 20 years ago, and began working with international coverage for his oil and gas clients. So as the CEO of Trademark Insurance Agency, Travis found himself being asked to do more consulting work for international companies, and this facilitated the creation of Texas Global Consulting, LLC. And as Texas Global Consulting, Travis brings together a holistic view that assists in that proper foundation for an international company's future success. And I believe Travis and I we've both been in person to here in Aberdeen for the Gateway 6 times now. I think we have.
I think you're right.
Yes, so oh yes, and here's and this is from I believe that was 2017, and some of you may be winning or 16 possibly. You may be wondering why I'm not in the photo. I was the person taking the photo. I was supposed to take the notes. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Travis Middleton. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It was a great presentation. You even gave me a few things that I didn't know about Houston, and I've lived there for 73 years now. So appreciate that. I want to say thank you to Brett Jackson and Granite PR for the ability to be here today and make this presentation. We have known Brett now for, I believe, around 13 years. I know that's an unlucky number, but it still works very well for us. Stacy, we appreciate your assistance on everything you've done to help accomplish what we're doing here. Trademark Insurance Agency, as Jeffrey mentioned, my wife is Welsh, and between her influence and a couple of oil and gas clients that needed some assistance on people coming in from out of the U.S., we got into the international arena, and we've expanded on that over the last 18 years or so. We have clients throughout the UK, Scotland, Wales, England. We have European through Italy, Spain, Norway, the Netherlands, Switzerland, then over to the Americas and South America, Canada and Mexico. We've had clients off and on that have just given us a wealth of knowledge on how to be able to talk and speak languages that everyone can understand. One of the things that Trademark Insurance Agency will do, and that Texas Global Consulting does, is to help implement a lot of the actions that the Greater Houston Partnership would suggest to you and recommend. So we would be bringing into play the working on your commercial insurance, whether it's your liability insurance or cybersecurity, or if it's working with your employees to let you know what the U.S. government and the state of Texas requires for coverages that are either optional or mandatory at that point. We work very closely. We like to work very closely with your CPA, your chartered accountant, with your solicitor in the UK and Scotland, and then also coordinate with your US legal entities also, so that we are all ensuring that we're working in a cohesive manner to accomplish what you're trying to do and ensure your best chance of success. Today, I have with me two of our business partners. I have Caitlin Bohyer, who is our Vice President for Employee Benefits. And I also have Jeremy Bohyer, who is our Managing Director for the Commercial Insurance and Cybersecurity. So at this point, what I'd like to do is introduce Caitlin so she can introduce herself and then give you a brief overview of our partnership and requirements you may be looking for that the U.S. employee requires for being a employee for you in a successful manner. Caitlin, would you like to jump in?
Certainly. Thank you, Travis. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Caitlin. I work very closely with Travis and assisting groups coming from other countries to the United States to better navigate the employee benefits side here. As you may or may not know, here in the States, we do not have a nationalized health service. So we have everything on the individual market with separate companies that offer medical, dental, and vision being the three main core employee benefits that employers will provide to their employees. In addition to that, 401k, retirement schemes, and life insurance, as well as long and short-term disability, help employers become competitive between other employers to find employees and really give them the best benefits that they can have to integrate here into the United States, coming from such a different scheme back in their home country.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Jeremy, you'd like to come in?
Yeah, and if we could, guys, can we go forward a few slides here? I have an overview a little bit ahead. If we can go, there we go. Yeah, right back one there. Thank you so much, guys. So as Travis said, I handle the commercial insurance, everything here from your basic property coverages, covering your company's possessions, to its general liability for your bodily injury and property damage, all the way up to its cyber and digital insurance. That's a pretty quickly emerging market that it has a pretty significant need stateside, and it's becoming one of the top claims that we're seeing in the commercial insurance industry. We work to address your entire commercial insurance needs with a strong emphasis on your professional lines and that cyber coverage as well. Caitlin and I work hand in hand on a pretty regular basis to make sure that that professional coverages, in addition with her 401k, group life, and disability, along with other health insurance, is meeting every need that you have as a company. We do, again, specialize in entities coming and establishing their subsidiaries in the U.S. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, Jeremy. One of the things that Jeremy always points out that he hasn't brought to you this time is the fact that in the work that he does, and also with what Caitlin does, even though the U.S. is 50 states, each one of them has their own regulations. So it's like working with 50 different countries to try to bring regulations into place for any type of work. When you're working in the state of Texas as your corporate home office, you're still going to be needing to deal with the additional states over what they require to have done. Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. Just to wrap up, again, we are a group that would like to bring together a very cohesive package of communication with your insurance agent, your solicitor, and your chartered accountants in the UK and Scotland, so that we are, again, making sure that we are not doing something that, unbeknownst to yourself, or would be of a disservice to you. We want to be able to talk freely with your other providers and support people to make sure that we're doing this in the proper manner. Anyway, that wraps me up for the day. Please contact us. Our contact information is there listed, and it will be in the recorded sector to it. The only person you're not seeing today is Joe Middleton, who is also my wife, and our CFO. She handles the individual health insurance in the market, but more so our Medicare retirement scheme, which is for people over 65. Stacy, back to you. I guess Jeffrey, back to you.
That's me. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Travis. And so moving on in the program, it's my pleasure now to introduce Mr. Gus Bourgeois. Gus is a shareholder at BoyarMiller, who provides legal counsel to clients for a variety of corporate transactions, including mergers and acquisitions, business transactions and contracts, negotiation and drafting of purchase agreements, and international transactions. Gus has participated in prior Aberdeen Houston Gateway events, and I'm told by Travis, he's also an excellent electric bass player. So with that, Gus, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. And you did very well with the name, which is a challenge, I understand. Good morning, everybody from rainy Houston, Texas. I would love to say that it's sunny with the beginning of spring. Our spring will last exactly 2 weeks this year, and then we're going to dive right into summer, I'm sure. So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone later this year at OTC and all the other opportunities that are available to come to Houston and spend some time again that we haven't had for a long time. So it's good to see everyone, a lot of faces I know. My firm hopefully is very familiar to a lot of you. It's BoyarMiller. It's a 30-lawyer law firm. We've been around about 32 years, and we've worked in the international sector for more than 20 years, and in particular in Scotland, in Aberdeen, and in UK generally. So we have a long history of being the US legal counsel for UK businesses who are seeking to do business here and doing business here. And that can be in form of buying an entity or buying a business here to expand into the US, or it can be just setting up office and going through all of the things that are necessary to get you to the point of operating within the legal limits of US law, Texas law, etc. All of which can be pretty daunting, and one of our chief aims is to make it less daunting, to be as communicative as possible and to sort of handle as much of the detail of that as possible as your lawyers here in Houston. So as Travis mentioned, I've worked with Travis and his team for many years, shall we say. As Travis mentioned, we have a group of professionals who often work together to help businesses get established here in Houston, here in Texas. We've been doing that model for more than 10 years. It involves sort of bringing together the people who are the most needed professionals for a new business, doing business here from abroad, and putting them all in one place and giving you an opportunity to meet them all at one time, hire and engage whoever you want to hire and engage, right? But to have it all in one place so that you don't have to drive all over Houston, which can be daunting. You know, we've had people leave my office and ask me to remind them which side of the road they should be driving on. So we think it's much better for everybody involved if you go to one place and meet everyone. And so we're happy to facilitate that. That's typically my role as a lawyer. So the first people that you meet when you come to the US to set up a business are typically your tax advisors. And I know we have Frank Langino from PKF here, who'll be speaking later. We work closely with Frank and PKF. And your immigration lawyer, if there's an immigration component to what you're doing in the US. And I know also we have Sang Shin on here, my good friend from Jackson Walker, who will be speaking next, I believe. So between the three of us, we are the first round of contact when you come to the US to try and set up an entity. And believe it or not, my role as the lawyer at that stage is pretty easy. I do what the tax people generally tell me to do, because most of the decisions about forming an entity here and moving money in and out of the US are tax considerations. And so we will work with these folks to set up the right structure from a tax perspective. If you have an immigration concern, then you've got an immigration structure that has to be followed to meet your immigration needs. And that's where someone like Sang will come through to help provide the structure for that. And then we synthesize it and put it all together and form it. And then my firm represents the entity going forward after that in all of the other things that have to be done to get up to speed, which is hiring and firing people, finding space, all the usual things that come along with opening a new office somewhere. So we're happy to do that. And that model hasn't changed in the 10 or 15 years that we've been actively working with companies based in Aberdeen coming to Houston. But what has changed is, let's talk about what's changed, because up until about 2015, 2016, there were a lot of companies coming to Houston from Aberdeen and UK generally. And of course, the price of oil took some hits back in those days and things did slow down, even though we are not purely an oil-based town, as Jeffrey pointed out. We did see a slowdown in the number of companies coming to the US. I'm happy to say that over that time period, we've seen an expansion of companies in the healthcare area, in technology. So we've seen a diversity of companies that we hadn't necessarily seen before, not just oil and gas related businesses. And so that's helped Houston grow its diverse customer base, its diverse business base. And it's helped my firm, frankly, grow a diverse customer base as well. But now we're seeing a return to service providers in the oil and gas industry, which is an encouraging sign with the price of oil. So that's one change. We're seeing a lot more volume. Another thing that has changed is that there's a need to expand, typically for a lot of these companies, to expand their talent pool, which I think Jeffrey alluded to in his presentation. As some generations get older and phase out of business, the younger generation's coming in, and it's harder to find qualified people these days than it had been 10 years ago in a lot of these areas. And so it's easier to do that if you have a footprint in multiple places. And Houston's a great place for that. Again, as Jeffrey mentioned, Jeffrey, I'm sounding like your cheerleader. But as Jeffrey mentioned, Houston's a great place to do that because there is such a wide variety of talent. The talent pool here is exceptional. So that's another one. I can also say that the expansion of the idea that you can work remotely has made it a little more palatable for companies to come to the US and dip their foot in, shall we say, and not necessarily commit as quickly as they would have before, because again, working remotely has become more acceptable than it had been before. So I am seeing a lot of clients coming in and taking a little more time, a little more strategy involved in hiring people and going to customers. But nonetheless, the fact is that that chain is now moving again. People are coming here, and we're excited about what 2022 brings. In that respect, I think it's going to be a great year. Hopefully COVID is mostly behind us and we can see each other face to face again soon, but this isn't so bad as we've all come to understand. Once again, I'd like to thank Granite for doing this. We were involved in the very first Houston Gateway, which was a live event in Houston at the time. Thank you, Stacy, for all your hard work putting all this together. Brett and your team, thank you so much for this. We would love to talk to anybody who's thinking about opening or expanding their presence here in Houston. I'm sure my information will be around and I'll be here to take any questions later. But that's all I've got. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Gus. Thank you very much. So moving along, now it's my pleasure to introduce Song Shin from Jackson Walker. Song is named among the best lawyers in America for immigration law, and he's experienced in business immigration. He's an experienced business immigration attorney that counsels international companies entering the U.S. market for the first time. He helps his U.S. clients navigate the ever-changing U.S. immigration landscape by ensuring their initial entry into and stay in the U.S. is compliant with U.S. immigration laws. He provides creative legal counsel to companies. Creative legal counsel, you'll have to speak further on that, Song. And possesses a broad experience in managing business-based temporary and permanent visa options. So, Song, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. I really appreciate it. I hope everyone can see my PowerPoint. First of all, just like to thank Brett and Stacy for all your hard work and putting this together. It is truly a pleasure to be here. I think I went to Aberdeen maybe about 5 or 6 years ago with Gus, actually, and I have very good memories there. Ate a lot of food, and even hugged, I believe, the Lord Provost at that time, John Reynolds. I don't know if he's around, but a virtual hug to you, my friend, if you are. But yeah, so Jeffrey, I will address your creative legal solutions question soon, but I thought that, you know, we would just kind of spend some time talking about how to get people here. If Gus and Frank are working on the setting up of the tax and legal structures, it is my job to try and get people here in one piece. And we look at immigration in the United States as more of a journey, I like to say, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But it's not one of those processes that that can be done at the very last minute. It's something that has to happen over time. And so we'll talk through those, and what better way of doing that. I like to do this. I don't know why. I think it's maybe the potential educator in me, but I just like having a hypothetical to run off of. And so when I went to Aberdeen, we stayed in Cruden Bay. So I came up with this Cruden Bay Engineering Limited company, Scottish-based engineering company that's bidding on a major contract with the Houston-based oil and gas company for construction of platforms, projects worth approximately $5 million. And they've gotten with Gus, and they've opened a U.S. subsidiary that is 100% owned by their Scottish parent. They have an engineering manager and a couple of employees that will want to be transferred over the course of the next year. And, you know, once this project is awarded, and this is kind of what we see projects that are kind of hanging in the balance, and all of a sudden it's awarded, let's go. And then of course the timeline is very aggressive to be here. So the question always comes is, what options do we have? How can I get here quickly? And so, you know, like I said, it is a journey. There are some things that we can do in the meantime, but there are some ultimate long-term plans that you have to look forward to. So in our consultations, we kind of talk about all the different types of visas that might be available. In the US, we call it an alphabet soup. So there are visas for a lot of different purposes. So you have, for example, a D visa if you are a crew member. If you have a specialty work occupation, you have an H-1B option. If you're from Canada or Mexico, you have a TN visa option. But we'll see quickly that those don't apply to a lot of our Scottish companies. The first one that they always say is, let me just get to the US first, saying, how do I get there first and do business with individuals, continue to work on setting up my business, get a lease and do all of that. So a lot of individuals come under a B1 visitor for business, or what we'll also term for Scottish companies is a ESTA, or a visa waiver. And if you're coming to the United States just to visit for a short time, to engage in a business activity, you know, and you're not going to be quote unquote working, just having business meetings, and you're coming to conduct that business and with the intention of going back home, a lot of people initially enter this way. So just some authorized activities, for example, negotiations, consultations, conferences, coming for OTC, for example, that's a conference where you can come in and under the B visa. You can attend seminars and just hold meetings, right? So the B is the best visa option for that. And then, like I said earlier, the visa waiver, the advantage that individuals from Scotland have is that you actually don't need an actual visa stamp. You can come for a more shorter term purpose to conduct those opportunities. You just do it through a program called ESTA. That's ESTA for short. So obviously, this is how you get here first. But then as the company continues to grow, as you start to, I think Gus mentioned it, the talent pool, as you start to look for individuals in the United States, you're realizing that you can't really find many people. And so the decision has to be made where you're having to bring other individuals from the parent company to the US to work. That's when we start looking at various visa options. And one of the more popular ones is called the L1 visa, or the intra-company transfer. And it does allow the transfer of executives, managers, or what we call specialized knowledge individuals within the same group of companies to be transferred to the United States. They can initially come here for a year if it's a quote unquote new office, with the ability to stay for 7 full years as a manager and 5 years if they're a specialized knowledge worker. So a popular visa type that is often requested. But I'll tell you one that most individuals go for, and that's called the E2 Treaty Investor Visa. And so the E2 is allowed for individuals that have a Scottish flag company that they're opening. And if you make a substantial investment into the United States, you create a real and operating company. And the intention of your business is to grow it, both economically and with US workers or US workforce, then you would be able to file for an E2 at the US Embassy in London. Okay, and so this is one where it's popular because you register the company with the US Embassy in London, and upon having that registration, you are able to transfer multiple individuals. And if you look back at our fact pattern, it said an engineering manager and other individuals or other employees within the next year. The E2 may be a good option because it'll allow the engineering manager, for example, in that fact scenario, to come over first on an E2 registration, and then other employees may follow shortly thereafter. And that may be very, very important if you win a project. As the company continues to grow, right, and you may have initially wanted to come here in a short-term capacity, but the company's growing, it's doing really well. We've seen a lot of Scottish companies that have started to make a big footprint in the Houston market. Then there are green card options that are available as well. And one of the more popular ones is called the EB1C, Permanent Residence Petition for Managers and Executives. It mirrors a lot of the requirements of that L visa that we talked about a little bit earlier, but this one allows for a more permanent pathway. Just to close, some considerations. Again, it's not a very, very short time frame. It is something that's going to take time. It is a journey. So the creative aspect is how do you use a combination of those visas to achieve the purpose of initially coming to the United States to conduct business, and then over time ensure that all your individuals are here in a proper work authorized capacity to do work. And so here's some considerations that I would like everyone just kind of to know at this moment in time. Immigration changes all the time, but right now we did just come out of a pandemic. And because of that, a lot of the embassies and consulates are catching up. They used to be closed. They're not closed. We have other variants that are potentially coming out. So as these variants come out, consulates and embassies tend to close and visa processing becomes a little bit longer. The key to a good immigration strategy is to proactively plan for it and to start early. So as soon as you think about what entry into the US may look like, it's really good to pick up the phone and call an immigration specialist, call me, and we can path out what that looks like. And like I said, those processing times, they really sneak up on you, and individuals aren't they're generally surprised at how long immigration can take. So on one of your visits, I'd love to meet with you all. I'll put my information in the chat box along with my LinkedIn, and hopefully I get to get out to Aberdeen soon as well. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much, Sam. And now moving on, it's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ewan Nielsen, who is a partner with Stronachs LLP. He is listed as a recommended lawyer in the projects, energy, and natural resources category in the 2022 edition of Legal 500. He has more than 30 years experience specializing in corporate finance transactions related to energy development and funding, oil and gas, upstream transactions. So, Ewan, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Jeff. Good afternoon and good morning. And thank you very much, Pierre, for giving us the opportunity to speak. Next slide, please. I just wanted to say a little bit about Stronachs. We're a law firm based in Aberdeen, Inverness, and London. We do a lot of work in the energy sector, both renewables, energy transition, and oil and gas, but also technology, employment, and commercial property. So today in Europe, we're facing change again. We've had COVID, then we've had COP26. We've got a bit more COVID, but we've had a war raging in Europe for about 4 weeks now. So I thought just speaking a little bit about how we see the global energy world possibly changing might be important over the next few days. So energy is important, energy security is important, because it's the uninterrupted availability of energy sources at an affordable price. The access to energy is very important because it's a provision of basic needs such as food, lighting, water, essential healthcare, etc. But the effect of the war in Ukraine, sanctions against Russia and Belarus, probably going to change the world substantially in terms of investment flows for energy, in terms of trade flows, and other food as well. And the reason for that is that Russia produces 12% of the world's the world's oil, and is the world's second largest gas producer in the world, with the US being the largest. Russia supplies 5 to 6 million barrels a day of crude and refined products, and is a permanent feature of Europe's energy landscape. Next slide, please. So it also produces between Russia and Ukraine, producing 25% of the world's wheat and 12% of the world's total calories. So the economic sanctions have been put in place on banks, industries, and the oil and gas space are going to have historic consequences, because once you put these types of sanctions in place, they normally stay in place for quite a long time. Energy security supply in the UK and especially Europe has therefore become of paramount importance over the past few days and over the next few months. This may have several consequences. It may accelerate the purchase of oil and gas from new sources, but also accelerate the energy transition. Next slide, please. So just a little bit of background. We've seen oil shocks before. 1973, Yom Kippur War. Then there was the oil cartel, OPEC cartel, brought oil to a huge high. BP drilled 67 wells in Prudhoe Bay to get one strike. We had the first Gulf War, 2008. We had the huge economic expansion, 147 barrels dollar for oil, and then the drop, 2011 to 2014, 100 to 130 barrels dollars per barrel. So we've had oil concerns this year from Ecuador to Libya, UAE, and Iraq and Turkey. But according to Petroleum Economist, we started the year with tight market facing low inventory levels and low spare production capacity, and that's made the situation even more important. The US, like the UK, has imposed sanctions on oil and gas. And next slide, please. Europe is aiming to take out a lot of Russian gas, which is imported through various pipelines. In Germany, I think Germany is the country which is most heavy hit. 55% of its gas comes from Russia, 45% of its coal, and 35% of its oil. So for Germany to change, not only just in, to an extent, rearming, but also changing overnight where it's purchasing its oil and gas and trying to change into the energy transition, that's going to be a very important factor for Europe in the future. China is probably the most important because it imports so much oil and gas from different sources. China has a strategic partnership with Russia and is the largest buyer of Russian oil. But China does not want to rely on any one energy supplier. And Iswar Prasad of Cornell University said that China will not save the sinking boat of the Russian economy, but it might allow it to float a little longer and sink a little more slowly. Next slide, please. So what's the UK's response? Well, this is a pivotal time because we're really waiting for that response this week. We've got a spring statement on Wednesday, and then by the end of the week, we should have the UK government proposing energy strategy policy for the future. So we expect huge development in the oil and gas sector in the North Sea. Companies are still, and the government still very much committed to net zero production. And the UK government and Scottish governments are very much committed to blue and green hydrogen and biofuels. Next slide, please. The government's also looking at substantial investment into nuclear and in a more retail sense, gas boilers being replaced with hydrogen boilers. We also are looking at the moment to secure supplies into the winter, this winter and beyond. And it's likely, looking towards the energy supply strategy to be published shortly, there'll be 10 new oil and gas developments in 2022, new exploration licensing rounds, and more importantly, in my view, new targets for offshore wind and solar. But the big thing will also be the UK's commitment to nuclear energy in the future. Next slide, please. Europe's response is really to state that it wants to change out Russian gas, which it's relied on for the past 40 to 50 years. And that's a fairly substantial change. We're waiting for the proposals to come through, but we'll see that change very much probably trading patterns within Europe and overseas. Next slide, please. For us in Aberdeen and in Scotland and to an extent in the UK, offshore wind, floating offshore wind, might be one of the big things in the future. UK is regarded to be one of the leaders in offshore wind in the world and one of the 7 countries in the world where offshore wind will be a substantial part of its energy security in the future. That represents not just electricity, but also green hydrogen. So just recently, the UK leased out £700 million of offshore leases in ScotWind leasing rounds in Scotland offshore. And a number of international offshore developers have invested substantially into those leases. In the US, we've just seen 6 blocks in the New York Bight area attracting $4.37 billion. We believe that will be the same in different areas of the offshore US coastline. So offshore wind floating especially, but it's fixed as well, is where the oil and gas industry was in the 1970s. And we see it's just starting there at this point. So we see a huge upsurge in this area, a lot in the eastern coast of the UK and in Ireland as well, in terms of offshore wind. Next slide, please.
Okay, 1 minute left, Ewan.
Okay. So in terms of offshore wind, it's about bringing down the LCOE cost. We believe that will happen in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And because offshore wind has much higher energy yield, floating offshore wind, we believe that provides huge opportunity for the supply chains. Next slide, please. So there's a new future in terms of trading blocks as a result of the changes in the past 4 weeks. There'll be an increase in LNG from the States and from the Middle East. ECGs might be reduced or relaxed. In the short to medium term, there could be a substantial acceleration in energy transition, especially in the UK, offshore wind, solar and battery storage. US dollar supremacy might be challenged by Saudi Arabia in terms of contracts with China, but we believe that the US dollar will come out on top, as it always does. Next slide, please. Investors in the energy supply chain since 2015, it's been very difficult for the energy supply chain in the northeast of Scotland. People have left, there's a lack of equipment and capital. But for the first time in a long time, we've seen real change, real hope and development, both in terms of renewables and in terms of oil and gas. Next slide, please. So we believe that while the war is raging in Europe, this is a time for investors to start deciding which way the energy supply chain is going to go and the energy trade globally. Because the investment decisions made now, we believe will be permanent for the next 20, 30 years. So we're witnessing a huge change in the energy industry. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Ewan, for that timely information on the global energy overview. I recognize several of your points from what I saw during lunchtime when I was watching the BBC on Politics Live. So thank you for that. Now we have we've heard from a number of service providers. And now it's time to narrow our focus more on the Houston region. And we're going to hear from two of the most prominent communities. And the first one is going to be the Woodlands with Mr. Gil Staley. Gil has been with the Woodlands Area Economic Development Partnership since 2005 and serves as its chief chief executive officer, He is responsible for recruiting new businesses to the Woodlands area and directing the business retention and expansion program. Gil also oversees the operational aspects of the economic development partnership while maintaining the financial integrity of the organization, as well as his sense of humor. Gil is a Aberdeen Houston Gateway veteran, and we've done several projects over the year, and I'm happy to continue that partnership with you. And Gil, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeffrey. And Brett, thank you very much again for the opportunity to present Aberdeen Houston Gateway. It's such a pleasure. I'm envious of
delighted to have the Woodlands here today, and just even seeing that picture is fantastic.
Well, I wish I was in Aberdeen, I have to say. I am envious of Jeffrey being there, but perhaps next year. So welcome to the Woodlands, albeit virtually. Welcome to our community. And this opening slide here is a good view of our town center area where most of our office space is located. If you go to the next slide, please. The Woodlands is located about 30 miles north of the central business district of Houston. We're approximately 20 miles from George Bush Intercontinental Airport, and it can be reached nonstop via freeway system that gets you there as driving the way I do in 20 minutes. You can be at the terminal. The Woodlands area, as we identify our service area, is contributed by the Woodlands, of course, but also the cities of Shenandoah and the city of Oak Ridge North, which are on the peripheral of the Woodlands. As you can see there on the right, the Woodlands is divided into 9 distinctive village or communities, as we call them, each with their own shopping, parks, playgrounds, and businesses that provide personal services, whether it be your dry cleaners, whether it be your attorney or your insurance agent. They're all located conveniently in each village. Next slide, please. Here's an overview of the demographics for the Woodlands. It's worth noting there on the top left, just in fact last week, we were recognized again by niche.com as the best city to live in America. And again, that's 2 years in a row that we've achieved that. Factors such as affordability, the local housing market, neighborhood diversity, area public schools, and walkability play a role in determining the rankings. So we're very proud of promoting that. You can also see that we're a very educated community, and that's relevant to the types of businesses that locate here. And we're known for those professional jobs that come to our community. You can also see on this slide that most of our jobs are white collar. They dominate the market at 83%. Our population is 120,000 people. It won't grow much larger than that. Now, it's also worth noting during the day, that population almost doubles because of, again, the number of jobs that are located here and the amount of people who commute inbound to work here. Very unusual suburban environment when you have that many people coming in as opposed to going out every day for their work. Next slide, please. We communicate and promote our high quality of life. And I know all of my counterparts across the country, across this state, believe in their quality of life. And we certainly do, as well as being unmatched. We have, the development itself, the master plan community of the Woodlands is 28,000 tree-filled acres. It was a working forest back in the day before it started development. It was a forestry operation by 2 major companies, but now it's a livable community. The photograph here is our 200-acre Lake Woodlands, which is completely developed now on its surroundings, both with office and residential. We have 300 holes of world-class golf. And I can attest to that. I play every week, and I played yesterday in 78-degree weather and blue skies. We have 354 kilometers of paved hike and bike trails. You can get to any part of our community without ever getting in your car via these trails. We have 145 free public parks, 1,021,000 square meters of shopping, dining, and entertainment. We're very well known for our shopping and dining, especially. We have 4 regional acute care hospitals. So Jeffrey talked about the medical center being the largest in the world, downtown Houston. Well, those same providers there also operate in our community. And for a suburban environment, that's pretty remarkable to have 4 very large acute care hospitals. And I'll explain what that contributes to later. We have a very highly rated public school system. Most of our families here have children who go to public schools, which is, again, such an advantage. And with that said, though, we certainly have very high performing college preparatory schools in our community. Next slide. Property taxes are important to all of us, whether you're living here or you're working here or your business, you're representing your business. Compared to other communities our size, we have a very low tax rate. And I gave you a snapshot here of the previous 10 years. Again, this is just our Woodlands Township property tax rates. 2013, again, 10 years ago, 31.7 cents per $100 valuation. Now it's at 22.31 cents per $100 valuation. So it helps tremendously to have those low tax rates when operating your business here or living here. Next slide, please. We thought it was worth mentioning about our education and go into a little more detail, especially the higher education system. We have a university center here that provides unduplicated bachelor's and master's degrees with these Texas colleges and universities, all of which can either be online or it can be on-site classwork. And these have changed over the years, but we've always held true that you could complete your college education here without ever leaving our community. And we're very proud of the universities and the colleges here that are represented. In addition to that, we have a community college, Lone Star Community College, which is the largest advanced education program in the state of Texas, certainly in the Houston region. They have 95,000 students in their entire system. Their headquarters is here in the Woodlands with a major operation called the Montgomery campus. Now let's go into the next slide and talk about the businesses that are here. Providing a snapshot here of just the top 10 employers in our community. We identify a major employer as a company that has at least 100 jobs. We classify them as non-retail, and please don't take that statement as one that we don't feel that sector is important. It's very important to the economic viability of our community. Retail is prominent throughout our community and a significant employer. We look at head of household type jobs with these major employers. Again, it's top 10 snapshot here. Look at the diversity. You have companies that are in chemical, education, financial services, healthcare, professional services, and then a utility provider with our electricity there at number 10. Healthcare, and I'll go into more detail, is our number one sector. Going back to those 4 acute care hospitals, they employ significant number. Look at the snapshot here of the top 10. You have Morrill Herman, number 2 employer. St. Luke's Health, number 3. Houston Methodist, another acute care, number 4. Number 7, Texas Children's Hospital. 4 of the top 10 employers are in healthcare. So that's hugely beneficial, not only to our life science companies that are here, but that's a growing sector for us, and we're paying close attention to growing that sector. I announced last week that we landed a company relocation from San Francisco that is in cell therapy manufacturing, a very important aspect of life sciences right now. We're working on yet another one in that same area from San Diego that we're hopeful that will come here. So life science is playing a key role, and we hope to see it jump into the top 10, but certainly in our major employer sectors. Now let's dive in even further on the next slide.
Okay, 1 minute left, Gil.
So here's a list of business sectors with our major employers. And you can see healthcare, 30% of those overall jobs with major employers is represented. So we're very proud of the fact of these companies. There's 84 of them that provide 37,000 jobs in our community. And then finally, the last slide, if you look at the next one, flight to quality is paramount now in competing with office space. There's so much availability, quite honestly, around the states in the Houston region. You have the advantage of going to quality. And that's a huge opportunity for us because the Woodlands is known for its Class A, very highly regarded office space. Here's a snapshot of just 3 of those that are in our area. You can see the availability rate, 4.4% direct availability. Honestly, COVID contributed greatly to that. We have not seen that kind of availability, certainly in my era here, which is the advantage for the tenants. For the first time, again, I've been here 17 years. I've never seen the advantage to the tenants as I have now in negotiating those lease rates. So we're very aggressive, or our landlords are, in contributing to the success of growing tenants. And then the last slide, connect with us obviously on our Facebook, our LinkedIn, and Twitter. And again, Brett, thank you for the opportunity once again to present at the Aberdeen Houston Gateway. And Jeffrey, thank you for hosting or emceeing today.
You're very welcome, Gil, and I look forward to seeing you in the Woodlands soon.
Thank you, Gil, for presenting the Woodlands to us. And now we're going to go to that second very prominent community in the greater Houston region that we're going to spotlight, and that is the Katy area. So Chuck Martinez, who's the new CEO of the Katy Area Economic Development Corporation. He just started 2 months ago. Before that, he was the Executive Vice President of Business Development at the Brazos Valley Economic Development Corporation, and he has over 15 years with Brazos Valley EDC. And he's been in economic development for more than 30 years, and he has quite a list of other locations where he has been active in economic development. I'll just mention a few of them. In Texas, the Bryan College Station region, where he was responsible for 20 County region and well, improving their innovation ecosystem. To paraphrase, in the San Antonio area, he's been active, in Laredo, in Beaumont, and Galveston. So he's been all over the state of Texas. But not only then, but also in Virginia, he's worked for 2 regions, Alexandria and Prince William County. So safe to say that that Katy is in excellent hands once again. And I'm going to turn it over the floor over to Chuck now. Chuck, we haven't met yet in Houston, so our first meeting is going to be virtual, but I'll be sure to get out to Katy to see you very soon. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're good to go on this end.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, and howdy. It's a pleasure to follow up my good friend Gil, who's 40 miles from the Katy marketplace. We're connected by what's called the Grand Parkway, and that's probably the fastest I've ever transitioned between Gil and myself in less than a couple minutes. So we like to drive fast in Texas and do business fast. So in addition to being 40 miles from the Woodlands, we're 30 miles from downtown Houston, and really a pleasure to meet you, Jeffrey, here virtually. I've interacted with your colleague, Craig Rhodes, now that I'm in my 1 month on the team. And before I begin my presentation, first let me say happy 10th anniversary. It is an absolute pleasure to join the Greater Houston Marketplace team. And I thought we would begin by having good spirits and good food. So these are definitely some images of our community's past, of our goose. So for those who like foie gras, I'm sure it has a wonderful pairing with good Scotch whiskey. But we definitely like our barbecue as well. As I begin my presentation, one of the things that I wanted to at least address for my remarks was addressing some opportunities that I'm going to be working with on our with our team. And that's something I think that the community of Aberdeen and others that are on this call can truly appreciate about how you can adapt and deploy tactical styles to punch above your weight. The Katy marketplace is about 357 square miles. That's about 5% of the Greater Houston marketplace. Our organization, the Katy Area Economic Development Council, is a private full-service nonprofit. It's been around since 2004, and we have over 200 investor members that are supporting our effort. Next slide, please, Stacy. So as Gil had commented, there are several submarkets around the Greater Houston marketplace that are extremely high growth. In our community, which is in the western side here on your map, we represent a community over 400,000 in population with, as Gil pointed out, a very highly educated marketplace. In this case, 75% of our residents have some level of college experience. Jeffrey mentioned my interactions throughout the Texas economic development landscape. And in fact, my hometown is just outside of Galveston in a city called Santa Fe. And so I look forward to the opportunity to get to know more of my regional partners in this regard, and especially in terms of how our marketplace intersects three different respective counties. Harris County, Waller County, and Fort Bend County there on your left of your screen. Next slide. So in preparing for today's presentation, I couldn't help but notice the wonderful motto of Aberdeen, of Bon Accord. And it's such a wonderful way of celebrating good agreements and good partnerships. And so I'll give you kind of a soundbite of the Katy way in terms of our value proposition. We are the Western Gateway and regional business hub for the Greater Houston marketplace, as Gil represents the northern portion of our community. But we're tremendously excited about the opportunities that are coming into our marketplace, with Texas leading the way of the United States recovery from the pandemic. In terms of speed to market infrastructure that I comment on here, for those that are not aware of the foundings of our community, followed basically what was known as the San Felipe Road. And for those that have not been in Texas in some time because of the pandemic, Texas just celebrated its Independence Day earlier this month. And so that I-10 interstate that connects Houston to San Antonio followed that very historic route, and is widely regarded as the world's widest freeway. And so our marketplace is not only provides that Interstate 10 and US 290 that goes from Houston to Austin, but also the Grand Parkway and Beltway 8. So if you look at the city's infrastructure transportation rings, of the 5 rings that are around the Houston marketplace, the Katy area supports the 4th and the 5th ring of that marketplace. Our Energy Corridor District is widely known for this partnership, and both accommodating up midstream and downstream companies, as well as the new companies that are entering into the marketplace. It was mentioned, Jeffrey mentioned earlier about the Texas Medical Center in downtown Houston. The Katy area also hosts the West Campus of that medical center, which is many of the hospital systems that are located in downtown have a presence in our marketplace. In terms of talent development and placement, the Katy ISD, or Independent School District, and the Cy-Fair Independent School District are in our marketplaces, as well as the Houston Community College, which are some of the top education centers in the country, as well as our direct relationships having the University of Houston's Katy campus in our marketplace. I know that how important it is to be able to maintain quality growth and still connections with the environment. And we'd like to, as Gil pointed out in the Woodlands presentation, to also affirm the quality of life in our sustainable green master plan communities, primarily put forward by the Howard Hughes Corporation in Bridgeland, which is the younger version of the Woodlands in our marketplace here in Northwest Houston. The U.S. Census Department will be releasing some more information in the coming days, and some of that statistics will show the migration that has happened in the United States, and the Katy area marketplace and the zip codes of our area are going to show our population's growth because of the migration that's happened. So next slide. And so allow me to at least share with you, I think, some of the areas that I like to focus in on from the Katy's partnership in the Aberdeen Houston Gateway. The first is the oil and gas sector and its transition to the net zero 2050. I think we're all familiar with the commitment of all the majors to move towards a much more decarbonized atmosphere, to also address the emission reduction targets that are around the world. If those that are on the call will be attending the April 5th and 7th World Hydrogen North American Conference in Houston. We look forward to having an opportunity to meet with you to be able to discuss how companies can help address, as pointed out earlier, the Houston Climate Action Plan. One of the other exciting aspects in this space is Midway Development, which is a Houston-based developer. Earlier this month had acquired the 68-acre ConocoPhillips campus that represents about 1.5 million square feet of space that will be ultimately used by for some sustainable mixed-use development. So wonderful opportunities in the net zero economy that the Katy area marketplace is happy to pursue. The Katy community is also home to the instructional campus of the University of Houston. And 10 years ago, the University of Houston had celebrated its first subsea engineering certificate program. And for those that aren't familiar with the subsea engineering program, this is a program that's geared towards the offshore engineering professions and looking at how equipment, tools, and support systems and infrastructure can be used for offshore petroleum production. And there's an exciting global initiative that was launched in 2018 called Seabed 2030 project, and it is a foundation, the Nippon Foundation out of Japan, and a UK-based organization that is focusing on mapping the ocean seafloor by 2030. And the Katy area marketplace, I think, is going to provide a tremendous platform for a lot of those initiatives coming forward. The third initiative that I would like to present as an exchange prospect opportunity is a new one that just was launched in November of last year with my predecessor, economic development organization in Bryan College Station. Texas A&M Experiment Station had established a consortia that went after the U.S. Department of Defense's funding towards defense manufacturing communities. And while Texas has 15 active duty installations in Texas that contribute over $100 billion in economic impact, Texas is the third largest state in the United States on defense contractors. And this is a program that is going to be looking for opportunities to attract companies to Texas, as well as companies in Texas working with other aerospace companies around the world on smart manufacturing skills, technologies, and processes to help strengthen the national security industry base. It's a statewide program, and we're happy to bring those introductions with the Katy team as a community partner into that effort by Texas A&M. And the fourth aspect, and I'll use this as kind of a transition towards my end of my slides, is a program that is helping to help companies both mutually launch in the United States and in Europe, and looking for right country partners to be able to soft land those opportunities. Next slide. So this is a program that I had authored in 2011 and in jumpstarting the Bryan College Station ecosystem in terms of commercializing technologies that were coming out of one of the largest research institutions in our country. And it was recognized by our peer organization, the International Economic Development Council, for how smaller communities could be able to adapt into the world of globalization. One of the things that we often found in my former community was providing a competitive advantage to the likes of Greater Houston marketplace. And so with my transition, it's going to make it a lot easier in terms of being able to not only attract companies, but also to help companies to quickly scale. But part of this is identifying champions for identifying companies that would be put into some deal velocity, and then also, of course, having that localized support with the Katy area community. And we look forward to working with Aberdeen officials and others in our region to be able to attract more opportunities into Texas. This is a program that ostensibly sets up the companies, the international companies registered agent would be based here in the Katy community. Part of not only the decision to launch companies into the U.S. marketplace is exploring the fit for that opportunity. And so there's, even before companies become clients, there's a lot of activity regarding who they would do business with, or in many cases, the more important cases, who their customers would be. And so there's that matchmaking and networking that's done up front and post-client status. It has proven to be a very rapid, streamlined method for market entry, and then at the appropriate point, being able to introduce these companies into third-party commercialization engagements. And so the last 2 points here is that our organization is actively recruiting ecosystem partners for legal, financial, and scale-up services, as well as operations space. And so I appreciate the earlier presentations from Boyer PKF and Jackson Walker on this call, and look forward to making our introductions to others on this during the next 2 days on opportunities to team together. The last point that I'll mention here is just some things that we had picked up on other business practices, whether it be from Boston, looking at relationship with Israel, or California having relationships with the Japanese business community, but how important it is to have bilateral investment matching funds. In many cases, countries are helping their companies to grow overseas, and it's something that is, we move forward with the International Gateway program here in the Katy marketplace, to finding partners, investor partners who would be looking at one-to-one matching. And so as I finish my remarks, I wish everyone a good fortunes and partnerships for the future. And I look forward to being a partner to the Greater Houston team and serving the community going forward. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Chuck. And I would just like to thank you. I know you've kind of been thrust into this a little bit, and you've just started and you were told it was a great idea. And I really appreciate you, Katy. We've showcased throughout the last decade, and I always enjoy a visit to Katy when I'm in Houston, and I look forward to hopefully getting back to Katy and seeing the developments on my next trip. So thank you for speaking today. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Jeffrey now, and he's going to, I think, encourage you, if you haven't already asked a question, to do so, and steer it to the appropriate.
I'm not seeing any questions as yet, Brett. So if anybody does have questions, please put it in the chat, or if you're quick, you can unmute and ask it before somebody else does.
If you can put the camera on me, then I'll just.
Maybe, Stacey, while people are thinking about questions, is it okay if I ask some questions?
Okay, that's fine.
I was going to maybe a question for Gus. Gus, are you still on the call?
He's there, but he's muted. Gus, are you there? He's maybe stepped away. You might have to come back to that one.
No problem. I think maybe Ewan could actually help with that question. From a lawyer's perspective, I was going to ask Stronachs or BoyarMiller as our legal firms here today that I'm definitely seeing a strong uptick in supply chain companies looking to set up in Houston at various stages, be it an entity or even just an agent or a distributor. So at various stages of exploring that market, which some are products, some are services. I think it's very important that firms get that right from the start. It's much harder to fix it after the fact. Maybe you and with your wisdom, you could comment on that, because there's definitely a lot of people looking to raise the flag again in Houston, which is great, but it has to be done correctly, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the energy supply chains will pick up because there has been a lack of investment over the past 2 years. So planning is key, and obviously from Houston is the centre of oil and gas and energy. So getting your tax planning and immigration are the two key things, and planning your commercial operation, being careful about what leases you enter into, what obligations you enter into. It's a large city, so from that perspective, taking your time about doing it and getting professional help is really important.
Thanks, Ewan. And I'll maybe just ask you, you mentioned the people element there. And again, I'm going to come back to someone that's helped me along my journey to Houston, Travis, who's sat next to me at the table here. But Travis, would you like to just comment a bit on that? The importance of getting the people bit right in terms of insurance, benefits, global mobility piece, you know?
Oh, certainly. It's extremely important. The potential for the success of a Scottish company coming into Texas and Houston area is, paramount on having the right people in place. And if you're not, and if those people aren't communicating with each other, then you are losing the potential that ensures that success. Again, Jeffrey and Joe are very good at bringing the conceptual piece together and bringing the partners together. And then once we can establish that, then we can come in and ensure that you've got the appropriate nuts and bolts in place so that you can move forward and do what you do best while your advisors are sitting in the background and talking amongst each other. So it's very helpful also just to have everybody talking together between Scotland and Houston about how the company wants to move forward.
No, that's I absolutely. And a lot of things for people to think about there to really maximize their success.
Yes.
And to get there quicker.
Yes. One of the other ones, and I believe Jeremy did bring this up in the conversation, is to ahead of time would be extremely good to give us a heads up that you're headed this way, and so that we can start doing some preliminary work, because what we also don't want to do then is surprise you with pricing for particular pieces of insurance that are specific to your industry. We're seeing some really ugly numbers right now in cybersecurity with everything that's going on in the world and such, but Jeremy is extremely good at what he's doing on these things. He's actually talking to the home office underwriters to correct them about the vision you're seeing from a international company coming to the U.S.
Okay, no, that's good. That's all good good points to consider. Jeffrey?
Yes, thank you, Brett. So I just wanted to, before closing out, just the first day, tell everyone to stay tuned for tomorrow's event that will start at the same time, 2 p.m. here locally in Aberdeen, 9 a.m. in Houston. And we're going to have another great program full of really interesting information. My colleague Jose will be talking on the energy transition in Houston. We will have some growth case studies from both companies here in Aberdeen as well as in Houston. We will hear from another community, Waller County. We will have the indomitable, the Aberdeen boy done well, G-Tech Representative Andy will be back again. And before closing out, I just wanted to, just so you know that we are paying attention also to the comments, I wanted to acknowledge Dr. David Alexander, Rice University Space Institute, and Jason Hoffman, both of them global Scots in Houston, who were invaluable for me in connecting me here in Scotland, in addition, of course, to Granite PR and the Lord Provost and everything. And thank you very much for that. And yes, Dr. Alexander, I did have that slip of the tongue where I said it was the Houston Spaceport was vertical takeoff and landing. Yes, it is horizontal. I chalked that up to my jet lag. Right now, I don't really know if I'm standing or sitting, but just to let you know that I was paying attention and I shan't make that mistake again. So thank you all, and I'll turn it back over to Brett.
Thank you very much. So as Jeffrey said, please feel free to join us again tomorrow. We have some great speakers tomorrow.
Just I had to make a mistake. Sorry about that. I called him Jason again. He's only taken me out to lunch twice, and I get it wrong every time. Sorry about that, Justin. Justin Hoffman. Jason. Yeah, keeping it in the family.
Justin, thank you for joining us today. Just a quick shout out for Justin. If anyone doesn't know Justin on the call, he's Scottish Business Network's man in Houston. And he's also a global Scot, one of the many global Scots that are there to help businesses. And I'm sure Justin would be delighted to catch up with any of you if you want to connect with them. But thanks for coming today, Justin. Tomorrow is Energy Transition Day, and it's also Growth Case Study Day. So we have 3 fantastic businesses that will be showcasing EnerQuip, Motive, and Energy. We'll also be hearing from the G-Tech Innovation Centre, one of our key partners, a great launch pad for Scottish businesses that are looking for a foot in the ground or to grow to the next level with Andy Greaves' support in Houston. So loads of great content tomorrow, and a huge well done to Jeffrey, because he has made it that we actually have finished 2 minutes early. Jeffrey, round of applause.
Just proves also by those slips that I made, it just proves that you're not talking to a bot.
Yes, so just a quick recap. There's tomorrow's agenda on the screen, and yes, that's great. So you'll be hearing from, as I say, Jose from Greater Houston Partnership. Is it
Becerro?
Becerro? No, I was reading the
Cemvita Factory.
Cemvita Factory, G-Tech Innovation, Andy Grieve, PKF Texas, and Energy, EnerQuip, and Motive Offshore. That's tomorrow's lineup, cracking companies, all great global success stories. So I look forward to hearing their presentations tomorrow. And so thank you again, everybody.